Hi, Michelle. Second part now. Carry on from where you left off. Tell us a bit more in depth about the processes that you follow for you helping people with trauma.
Right. Okay. So we talked a little bit in part one about that there are three phases, according to me, right? Everybody has their own approach. So this is just what I noticed from my own personal process and also from working with clients for almost 20 years. I leaned into the science of recovery because I feel like it's very easy as a survivor to think it won't happen for me. Or, and I can say this honestly, because it was part of my process. I was a kid and it took almost 30 years to get my PTSD diagnosis. So by the time I got into recovery, I thought, "Oh, this is just who I am. I don't think I can change." And at that time, we didn't have the neuroscience backed processes that we have now that I'm sure you teach everybody about. But I learned in my recovery that my brain was able to change. I just had to retrain it. And so if there are like in my process now, what I do with clients is that's where we start. We start in like stage one. It's all about control, creating
Yeah.
a healing intention because your brain needs a vision of where you want it to go. It's kind of like your GPS. If you don't put in an end destination, it doesn't know how to get from London to Paris, right? You don't give it that end destination, it doesn't know how to get there. And the brain is like that. It starts making pictures of what you tell it you want, which is brilliant because then it starts trying to figure out unconsciously how to get that. So the first step is to create this very robust healing intention. And then the second step in the control phase is to really start learning how to control your state. We all have symptoms, right? When all of a sudden you have a flashback, or you can't breathe, or you get really shallow breath, or you can feel your mood just plummeting. But that's
Yeah.
right. Your state is changing, but that is really just a neurochemical cascade that is going from your brain down into your body. But when you know how to understand, "Oh, my sympathetic nervous system is getting aroused. That's all this is. And I have techniques I can use to amp up my parasympathetic nervous system." Now it's not about the story that your brain starts screaming about. It's all about, okay, I need to breathe. I need to move, whatever, I work with clients. It's not the same for everyone, right? We're all individual. So some people need to get up and move. Other people need to breathe. Some people need to sit and really focus on a spot on the wall. But it's learning like, what is it for you that allows you to reclaim control over your state so
Yeah.
that you shift
I,
from sympathetic to parasympathetic? What are you thinking?
I think from my own personal experiences, and not just with clients, for me personally, because obviously I've got diagnosed with CPTSD. I can be for years. I could be sitting there on the sofa in a perfectly good mood, and there's like just something comes across me and my mood just totally changed, and I didn't know why that was or what that was, and nothing had gone on. So one of the strategies that I use is to recognize, especially once I knew where it come from and what caused it, is to recognize where it's come from and recognize that my circumstances and surroundings is different to what's going on. It's come from trauma, it's come from my past there. I don't really need to acknowledge it. I can kind of let it pass through me, take a
Mm.
breath, um, whether it's mindfulness or whatever, and then focus on the fact that just because I'm feeling it doesn't mean it's true. This isn't accurate, right? Let's get back to where we were. And I've done that with like when you get like anger, that I've had anger come through me, like in a supermarket. And I'm like, there's nobody even around me. I know where that's come from. And because I know what I know, I was managed to overcome that. Whereas in the past, that mood would have stayed with me for several days because you've gone into like a fight or flight mode. Yeah. That's my experiences.
Exactly. That's such a beautiful illustration of the whole idea of being able to reclaim control over your state. And so often it happens, we don't even realize, like you were saying, you don't even realize, I don't know, maybe you're walking down the aisle of the supermarket and
Yeah.
they're like giving out samples of fried chicken. You're not thinking about anything, but you smell the fried chicken, and that can activate a memory that you're not even thinking about or even aware is activated, but just the smell triggers a neural network
Yeah.
that triggers a whole neurochemical cascade. And suddenly you're not even aware of it, but you have all that feeling. And I think it's the science to me is so fascinating because then once I learned all that, I could stop blaming myself for being a freak and acting out for reasons that I couldn't understand. So
Yeah.
I think so I love that.
Yeah.
And so once you learn how to control your state and develop those processes, and it's trial and error, right? I don't know about you, but
A
I
lot
didn't
of
figure that out right
practice.
away. I had to do a lot of testing.
A lot of therapy, a lot of practice in there because there would be certain things that I'm a really chilled, easygoing person, but then there's certain things that I'd overreact to, and it would be the most tiniest thing ever. It didn't even make sense, and I couldn't understand why. And then the problem is, you'd stay in that anger and then spend several days in denial that you're in the wrong, and then trying to justify your actions. And then when you have the therapy, and it's like, well, what were you overreacting for? And then you relate it back to a trigger. Sometimes it's not even a trigger. It's just like I can't even connect it. So it's the brain just not taking a chance. But then there's other things that the typical. So somebody spoke to you in that way. Who else spoke to you that way? And you put oh, right, you know what? It come from my awful mother. I can understand why I've gone into that reactive mode there as well. But it's exhausting. It takes a lot. But once you start understanding her, and then you get to a point for me, and I teach clients this, is that they can get to a point where they go, I know what I'm feeling. I recognize what I'm feeling. It's not accurate. Take a breath before you react. And it takes practice. It takes time, but you can
Yeah.
get to that point where you can actually go, yeah, I can control this. And that's how I do it. But it still takes time.
It does, and I love that you say that because I think we hold high standards to ourselves. I think as survivors, we're so unkind to ourselves, so judgmental, so critical. And so we have such high expectations. And the healing process, you have to be so gentle with yourself. Like, just know that every time you try something, you're a little bit closer to making it work. Like,
Yeah.
one of not hypnosis, meditation was huge for me, but I fought
Yeah.
it for the first 30 days. I couldn't stand sitting in my body. It made me feel like I wanted to jump out of a window. But it ended up long term. I mean, I still do TM today. It's been, I started it in 1998. So it's been a long time. And it's still something that it just like, I continue, what I'm trying to say, not very well, is that I continue to train my body and my mind to
Yeah.
maintain the control I have gathered.
Stay on top of that.
You do. And I think that's a really important point that needs to be made. Nobody taught me that. I kind of thought, like, I'm done with my recovery. Awesome. Let's go. And then
Yeah.
I learned, like, I have to, like, it's like I've just built all these recovery muscles. I still have to go to the gym and
Yeah.
define them and maintain them.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's it. I've got some clients that, and I'm always really brutally honest with them, and I've had it done to me by my own therapist, where they're like, "How long do you think I'll be in therapy for, or how long is it going to take me to get over the trauma?" And I'm like, for some people, like, you could be in therapy forever. Here's why,
mm,
or you're going to be working on that trauma forever, bit by bit, step by step. And when I see my therapist like a couple of months ago, I was like, how long is it going to take before I'm finished with this trauma therapy? And she's like, Lee, do you really want me to tell you? You'll be having trauma therapy forever. You know this. Why are you asking me this question? I was like, yeah, okay. Right, what are we talking about again? Because
I hate that answer. I'm going to be so honest with you. I'm going to go out on a limb here and just tell you how much I hate that answer. So, I'm a board certified hypnotist, and I
yeah,
use hypnosis in my practice all the time. And I'm also a master neurolinguistic programmer.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
when I came out of my recovery, and hypnosis and NLP were key, I was literally about to kill myself, and I thought, okay, I'll try one more thing. I'm going to go like really outside of the box. And I had this weird, we were talking in the other part one, that to me, trauma recovery is really all about kicking a trauma addiction and ending an identity crisis that trauma puts in place.
yeah,
And so the addiction part, I was driving, I live in a small beach town. I was driving to the beach, and on the radio, there was a commercial for a hypnotist who was in town who could help end a nicotine addiction. And I thought to myself, well, what's one addiction after another? It's like an addiction either way. So I thought, what if I tried hypnosis? And here's the thing, I didn't believe in hypnosis. When I
Yeah.
was in college, I was in a psych course. I volunteered for a hypnosis study, and I was super proud, as any good survivor would be. I got kicked out of the study because I was unhypnotizable, because I was so like always like on alert. I couldn't relax enough to do hypnosis.
Yeah.
So so all these years later, when I was really afraid, I was just really afraid of what was going on in my head. And I thought, I have nothing to lose. I don't believe in this. It's $100. I'm gonna find a hypnotist and I'm gonna see what she like what they can do. And I interviewed 7 because I'm an overachiever and I don't trust anybody. And one guy said to me, we'll start at 9 a.m. and we'll just go all day and into the night until you're finished. And I thought, oh my God, that sounds awful. Like I don't want to be in like trauma therapy all day and night. I think I'll have a meltdown. I found this really wonderful woman. She still does this work. Her name is Laura King with Summit Hypnosis. She works virtually. So if anybody is interested in trying, hypnosis for trauma recovery, I'm happy to share with you my own mentor. Um, and I went to her and I said, how long will it take? And she said, let's just take it one session at a time and see what happens. And I was done in 6 sessions.
Yeah.
And I never needed it again. Now, I've done like a lot of work before I got to her. But the reason that I'm sharing this story is because I didn't believe it would work and it didn't matter. I wanted to be free. And that
Yeah.
was really interesting. You don't
Yeah.
have to believe in the recovery process or any modality, but you have to foster your desire for freedom, which is actually step 3 in stage 1 of how I work with people, is to connect to that spirit of your desire to be free. And what I find so fascinating, the reason for this whole story is
Mhm.
because there is science behind how hypnosis and NLP and lots of different modalities actually change the neural networks of the brain. We literally, with language, can change the neural networks of the brain. Now, when you think about that, what that really means is all those neural networks that are running trauma patterns, we can snip them. Just imagine you've got a scissor, you snip them, they're done. And through a process like that, that does not make you retell your story, that is gentle and very compassionate, it is possible to rewire the brain and be free. Now, is that for everybody? No, because some people don't like hypnosis and so they need to find something else. But for people who are
Yeah.
open to being relaxed and allowing someone, and I didn't think that I was the whole first session, Lee, I spent the whole time in my head thinking to myself, this is so stupid. This is so dumb. What a waste of time. She's saying idiotic things. And imagine my shock that night when, for the first time in almost 30 years, I slept 8 straight hours when I'd only been sleeping 1 hour a night.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a nightmare. So I woke up the next morning and I thought, okay, maybe there's something to this hypnosis thing. So I think that it's so important to have hope in recovery. And
Yeah.
that's why I don't like when people say, oh, you're going to be doing this for the rest of your life, because how do they know? How do they know that you're not going to
I think
wake up one day and there's going
I
to
think
be a shift that sets you free?
think for me, and from my experiences, I think it's probably it's the level of trauma that somebody's been through. And for me, I've had clients from my own experiences, and I've had clients with that level of trauma, and and I'm like, yeah, do you know what? You'll be fine. But like, there's clients that the trauma they've been through has been so severe, and I've been told like the trauma I've had is irreversible. And I'm like, and I kind of agree with her. Whether somebody out there I could do like that type of therapy and it makes a difference, I don't know. Who knows? I'm open to anything because nobody likes walking around with trauma. But from kind of where I'm as a therapist, and obviously I don't know about like the hypnosis NLP combination like yourself. There's such levels of trauma that especially if it's come from childhood, it's because it's often irreversible. So for me, and you can tell me if you think it's, you don't agree with me or not, but I think it would be dependent on the level of trauma that somebody suffered for me.
Well,
But I did have a lady on and she was saying that she had a lot of trauma, and she did, like hallucinogenics and MDMA with like a doctor or therapist. And she reckons after 3 sessions, her trauma pretty much disappeared. It's really interesting. So there seems to be certain things out there, and I'm never going to dismiss any of them, you know?
Well, and that's the thing, and I would never wanna dismiss your ability to be free.
Yeah,
And
that would be
and
great.
it's true, trauma is irreversible, but I don't hear that as a life sentence. Like, I've worked with childhood sexual abuse survivors, that's the majority of my practice.
Usually
So
is, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So we know that the earlier that happens, the more developmental changes that creates. Okay,
Yeah.
so those may not be reversible, but that is also not a life sentence to misery, depression,
No, no,
anxiety.
no.
So, and I think it's really important. And again, because I this hypnosis and NLP background, the language we use creates the life we live. The language
Yes.
we use creates the pictures in our brain, and our brain uses those pictures to understand the world that it is in. And your
Yeah.
brain every 6 seconds asks itself, "Am I safe?"
Yeah.
And right after that, it says, "What do I need to do to be safe?" So if we're constantly programming ourselves to believe, "I am never going to be free. I am always going to be damaged. I am always going to be in therapy." Well, that's your brain's going to be like, okay, great. That's the plan. Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
So I think it's a fine line. I absolutely respect what people have told you. And as an alternative practitioner, I cringe at that because it blocks the mind in instead of opening it up to possibility of maybe it's not going to be that free.
I think, yeah, I totally get that because if you got somebody that's going to accept that's got it. But for me, if it's the case, like, you know what, the trauma you've got is never going to go. I'm not going to just sit there and go, well, I'm going to live in trauma. I'm like, okay, what therapy can I do? What can I do to chip away at it, to overcome it, to outgrow it? That's how I see it. And when I've had clients that it's like I explain because a lot of clients don't understand trauma, and when I say like trauma's there, it's permanent, it never goes. However, what we can do are these things, and I'll tell them the things that you could do to process it, to recognize it, to deal with it, overcome it, and all the strategies and techniques that you can. And over a period of time, you'll be able to manage that trauma. So you're not going to be where you were for the last 10 years or whatever it might be. So that's kind of what I mean there as well. So you might always have that trauma, but the more therapy, the more things that you do, and you're more consistent on all the work you do, yeah, you might be there forever. But the difference that you're going to be from where you started to where you are on that never ending journey is going to be a considerable difference. That's where I see it. Not just stuck in trauma, unresolved.
For sure, for sure. And we know that on a cellular level, every cell records your experiences. So literally we carry our trauma all the time. It's just like, how do we move beyond that to live a life that feels not just basically functional, but joyful, right? So that's, once you get the control phase under control and you start like really focusing on your healing intention and leaning into it and learning how to modulate and self-regulate your own state and learning to connect to that spirit of your desire to be free and to find a way to connect to something that feels good because that is essential. Then the second phase is all about, okay, now let's create the changes that need to be accomplished
Yeah.
so that we can move past this. And in that phase, I found that the most important things really have to do with the wound. Like, nobody ever taught me to attend to, like, trauma literally means wound. And that wound is really a soul wound. It's like a gaping gash to the soul. And
That's
I
exactly how I
really
say that.
Right, right. And nobody ever taught me what to do with that. I had to figure that out myself. So, in my process with people, I'm like, let's address this like the soul wound because we need to be deep in here to heal out from that place. And once you do that, being able to then soothe that wound and then shred the story. Because the more we tell our
Yes.
stories
Yeah.
over and over and over, right? What are you thinking? It's the worst.
Yeah. You just think it's going to be a cycle.
Yeah, and if we lean into the neuroscience, we are activating the neural networks of our trauma every time we tell the story. Every time we tell an aspect of the story, your brain is constantly going back into itself. It's called a transderivational search. It goes back into itself. It looks for the information that you're talking about. It looks for the information that's similar to what you're experiencing, and it lights up all those neural networks, which is exactly the opposite of what you want to do. right? So I always tell people when I'm
Yeah.
working with them, you get one shot to tell your story. That's it. You can tell it to everybody else over and over, but you cannot come into my space and keep telling it because it is the opposite of what we want to train your brain to do. So we have this whole like tell the story and then we shred that story because the third step in the change phase is to change the meaning. You have to be able to change the meaning because to me, the meaning of the story, you tell me what you think about this. I think the meaning of the story is the source of a lot of our ongoing trauma issues. And I'll share what I mean by
Please
that.
do.
So, for example, I'll just use my own. So
Yeah.
my trauma was medical, right? So
Yeah.
one of the meanings from my story, I was dying and nobody could figure out how to save me. All because I'd been given an antibiotic for a very routine infection, which meant in my brain, I took something that was dangerous and nobody could save me. So, not hard to figure out how I became completely anorexic. I was like, I didn't want to put anything in this body. You didn't know what it was going to do. The meaning I took away from that was terror on so many levels. Every day I woke up thinking, what's going to hurt me today that's going to kill me, that's going to be normal for everybody else, but kill me, and no one's going to be able to help. And that was the meaning I took. Something's going to kill me. No one's going to be able to help. I'm going to die a horrible death.
Of course.
That was
Yeah.
the meaning of my trauma. And that's what I woke up with every day. And that's how I went through every day at this high alert of terror. What's going to kill me today? And how do I control everything to stop that from happening? It was an insane way to live, but it
Yeah.
just came from the meaning that I took from the story of my trauma. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Why would it be anything other than that after what you've been through? It makes sense.
It was an accident. Like, I can tell you now, I don't wake up every day feeling like that. It was a freak accident. You know, who knew? You don't know what you don't know. The doctors didn't know. My parents didn't know. It was an accident. Okay. So that's easy. Let's put it in this. Like I was working, have a client in Australia and she's working through some really tough CSA stuff
Yeah.
and we're working on changing her story, right? So mine is a little easier. It's not interpersonal. So interpersonal stories are more of a challenge, right? Because I can honestly say that doctor did not try to hurt me on purpose.
Yeah.
But when
Yeah.
you're in a situation where someone did try to hurt you on purpose, how do you soothe that wound? How do you change that story?
Yeah.
How do you change and alter that meaning? And it's a personal process for each person that you have to be able to sit down and really identify what is the wound. And for this client, the wound was nobody stood up for her. Her
Yeah.
father didn't stand up for her. Her mother didn't stand up for her. They knew and they did not stop it. And so that's the wound that she needed to soothe, that feeling of being alone because nobody protected her. Okay. So then that's the story she's telling herself. I'm alone. No one will protect me. Now, how she's changing the meaning, she's stepping in and building a post-trauma identity, which is what I do with everybody. She's building a post-trauma identity where she protects herself. And she's, in her 30s. So she's old enough to do it. And how is she doing that? She's doing that by turning around and helping other people who are coming through this, right? So she's speaking out on
Yeah.
behalf of so many women who are silent. So
Yeah.
she's building a whole post trauma identity around the ability to protect herself and others. And that changes the meaning of the story that she used to tell herself. And that alters and soothes the wound that
It's where you
originally was
you
made.
go
Is
from,
that
yeah, of course, because you go from victim to survivor, yeah, and you become a therapist. For me, becoming a therapist, it was I want to be there for other people when nobody was there for me, and the amount
yes.
of clients that I've had and got now, I am the only person that's there for them. Even
Yep.
had it today, I'm the only person there for them.
Yep.
So not I'll sit back and put my hands behind my head and go, oh, yeah, I got satisfaction out of it because I'm too busy focusing on the next thing. But that's one of the main reasons I become a therapist. So there is that sense of you got something right at least in helping
Yeah,
people.
and I feel like we're all like you have you ever seen elephants walking a long distance and, like, they each hang on to the tail in
Yeah,
front
yeah,
of
yeah,
them and
yeah.
they go I feel like that's what we all are. Whether you're doing it like you and I decided to do it professionally, but there are a lot of people, like, you don't have to be professional to soothe your wound, shred your story, and change the meaning in a way that helps somebody else. And I think it is that giving of ourselves to other people, even if it's just like you're in a bookstore and someone looks like they're having a hard day and you just hold space for that with them. Now, I
Yeah,
can't tell you how many places I've been, including on the beach. You know, I'm on the beach every morning and this woman just I don't know why, she just started telling me her trauma story. And I just it's like part of how I give back is to know I can help hold this for somebody else because I'm strong enough now. And that's an easy thing to do as a survivor, as a way to start changing the meaning. I'm not defined by what happened to me. How can I
yes,
use this in
yes,
service of somebody else?
yeah. That's one of the
Yeah.
things that I say the most is that it doesn't define you.
Yeah.
Yeah, make that clear. Because a lot of
Yes.
people, especially at the start of therapy, think that it does. No, it doesn't. Here's the reasons, and this is the reason it's not going to define you. And then often they feel a lot of confidence that they can go on and progress and live the lives that they want. And it has not just defined them. Yeah, this is something that's happened. Let's deal with that and let's go on and thrive in your life by you might have to work a bit harder. You might have to do certain different things to get to where you want to go, but nobody's saying that you can't do that. And that gives a lot of confidence.
Definitely, definitely. And that leads right into the 3rd stage as I see it. So if you have control at the beginning and then the change phase, and then you get into this beautiful place, this create phase where you start really focusing on and intentionally creating a post-trauma identity. Because I'll tell you a funny story. When I
Yeah.
got out of my recovery and all my symptoms were gone and I was sleeping great and I was happy and I was feeling good, all of a sudden the world that had been in black and white was suddenly technicolor and I was completely overwhelmed. I didn't know how to live like that. I had no clue how to live as a happy person. I
Yeah.
had no clue. I had no relationship. I had no job. I had no career. I didn't have anything that a 40-year-old person should have because my life had been 30 years for, in the darkness of PTSD. So I'd bounced around. I hadn't been able to hold jobs. I couldn't maintain relationships. And then I came out. I was like, I don't know how to live like this. I literally said
Yeah.
that to my
Yeah.
brother.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do not know how to live as a normal person. And it was a whole year of banging around. Nobody told me, you have to be intentional about who you decide to be now. You have choices. You've got to like figure out who that is. And so I always, that's phase 3 is such an important phase to me because you have to create that intentional identity that you think you want. It'll change. You evolve, but you have to like
Yeah.
have a very focused starting point and then strategize. Okay, if that's the vision, what do I need to do to lean in and embody that? And then you develop the strategy and then the last step in the whole 9-step process of these 3 phases is implementation. It's to go live as that person that you've decided to be. And when you look at that beautiful ability to create that sense of calm connection to who it is you choose to be and where you've come from, that chaos of being out of
Yeah.
control, it's such a beautiful testimony to all of us who survive whatever level trauma.
Yeah. Of course.
Finally get to a place where we say, "Choose. I choose again."
Yeah.
Oh, I just got chills because that to me was everything. I didn't have choices, and healing to me was all about, "Oh, I have choices now," and that felt really good.
And I find that with clients when we're coming towards the end of their trauma therapy and they realize that the clouds have parted and it's like a blue
Yeah.
sky for the first time. They've overcome not knowing how to live a life full of anxiety and stress. They're like, Lee, I've got this void in my life. I've got this anxiety. How do I get rid of it? So we have to focus on positive things, good things. That's going to become the new you. And suddenly you have got options. You're not defined by your trauma. Your whole existence isn't about getting through life traumatized. You've dealt with that. You can manage it now. You know your strategies. You know what you need to do. And you can actually go and make positive choices and live your life. Definitely. So
Yeah.
I
What a
think,
great place to get to.
yeah. It's a brilliant, yeah. I think it's great. I love what you do, and I can see how it affects people in such a positive way of what you do, and just the way that you deliver it for them is amazing. As always, thank you so much for coming on, Michelle.
Thank you. I want to invite anybody who wants to start training your brain. You can just hop over to my trauma coach. You don't even need to opt in. I just have up on my site a brain training audio. It's about 19 minutes and it will start training your brain for peace and calm. If you listen to it, I heard this great statistic. Takes the traumatized brain 62 consecutive days of training to create a change that actually sticks. So I'm going to challenge any of you to do this brain training for 62 days and then feel free to email me and let me know your results. A lot of people find that they're able to more quickly re-regulate themselves, they sleep better, and they're more even keeled. So if that happens for anybody, I'm so delighted.
Definitely.
Thank you for having me, Leah. This has been such a great conversation. I love the work that you do and the way that you are creating a space for people to have real conversations about
Yeah.
trauma so that we can eliminate the stigma and
Yeah.
release the shame and step into what it looks like to just do the work and
Yeah.
then have a good life. Thank
Exactly.
you.
Thank you so much. Thank you as always.